A rust-free vintage Toyota Sunrader recently listed for $69,500, billed as rarer than most Ferraris. These are 18-foot fiberglass campers riding on a Toyota pickup, most with a four-cylinder, making barely 116 horsepower. So why pay supercar money for a slow little motorhome that old? Mechanics who have spent decades keeping them alive point to a handful of deliberate choices. These are 10 reasons why 1990s Toyota motorhomes last 500,000 miles. Number 10. It is not really an RV. Strip away the fiberglass box and the tiny bathroom, and what you are looking at is a Toyota pickup. From 1977, the coaches were bolted onto the standard Toyota truck chassis, and from 1986 onto the one-ton cab and chassis. That single fact changes everything. When something goes wrong on a domestic motorhome, you are often chasing a proprietary part that nobody stocks. When something goes wrong on a Toyota motorhome, you are working on a Hilux. Any mechanic on any continent has seen that drivetrain 1,000 times. The parts are on the shelf. The repair manual is in their head. Owners talk about pulling into a small-town garage in the middle of nowhere and having the thing diagnosed in minutes, because underneath the camper, it is the same truck that hauled bricks and taxied fares in 40 countries. Chinook, Dolphin, Sea Breeze, the Winnebago Warrior, the Itasca Spirit, more than a dozen different names on the box, and almost the same Toyota truck under every one of them. That is the quiet foundation of the whole legend. Longevity is not just about how well a machine is built, it is about whether you can keep it running when it breaks. And a vehicle that every mechanic already understands is a vehicle that never has to die in a driveway waiting for a part. Number 9. Now let me puncture the myth before it gets out of hand, because not every Toyota motorhome engine is immortal. In 1989, Toyota added a 3-liter V6 to give these campers the power the four-cylinder never had. On paper, it was the upgrade everyone wanted. 150 horsepower instead of 116. Easier hills, less white-knuckle merging. But that V6 carried a flaw the four-cylinder did not. Certain years were prone to blowing head gaskets, serious enough that Toyota issued a recall to address it. And here is the part that matters to you. A V6 motorhome that had the recall work done can run for decades. One that slipped through can cook itself. 2 rigs sitting side by side on the same lot, same year, same price, and the only difference is a line in the service history that you cannot see by kicking the tires. On a V6, you check it by running the vehicle's number through a Toyota dealer to confirm the recall was actually carried out. This is the first clue to the real story of these vehicles. Their survival was never guaranteed by the badge. It was decided by whether a specific known weakness got addressed. The immortal ones are immortal because somebody made them that way. Number 8. The engineering that keeps these campers alive is almost aggressively low-tech, and that was the point. No turbocharger to spool up and blow out. No maze of vacuum lines. On the earliest rigs, a carburetor you could rebuild on a picnic table, and even the fuel-injected versions kept the electronics to the bare minimum needed to run. Fewer parts is not a compromise. It is a longevity strategy. Every sensor you delete is a sensor that cannot strand you. Every system you leave out is a system that never leaks. And because the design never really changed, the supply chain never dried up. More than 30 years after the last one rolled off the line, companies are still building brand new crate versions of these engines from scratch. Think about what that means. You can drive a 1990 motorhome today and drop a factory-fresh long block into it next week. Try that with almost any other 30-year-old vehicle. Simplicity is why these engines were easy to trust when new, and it is why they are still on the road, still fixable, still cheaper to keep alive than to replace, decades after the world moved on. Number 7. Here is a strange truth about these motorhomes. They last partly because they are slow. That little four-cylinder was designed to make around 116 horsepower in a pickup, and then it was asked to haul a fiberglass house. So it spends its entire life working gently. Owners will tell you they take steep grades at 35 or 40 miles an hour, tucked in the right lane with the trucks. It feels like a weakness. It is actually the secret to the mileage. An engine that never gets pushed to its limit is an engine that barely wears. The internals see a fraction of the stress they were built to handle. There is no redline heroics, no sustained high boost abuse, just a steady, unhurried churn the engine could keep up almost forever. The same math that makes the thing frustrating on a mountain pass is the math that carries it past 300,000 miles. You are not driving a fast machine that happens to be reliable. You are driving a slow machine whose slowness is the entire point. Number 6. There is one component that can turn a healthy engine into scrap metal in a single second, and it is not the pistons or the crank. It is the timing system. When it lets go, valves and pistons can meet at the wrong moment and destroy everything around them. Most engines of this era used a rubber timing belt with a service life of maybe 60 to 100,000 miles, a ticking clock you had to reset or gamble on. The 4-cylinder in these Toyotas used a chain instead. Hardened steel links running in an oil bath, designed to last the life of the engine. Mechanics who open these up at 200,000 and 300,000 miles routinely find the chain, the guides, and the sprockets looking like they belong in an engine with half the mileage. That is not luck. That is a deliberate choice to spend more on a part most buyers never think about. The single most common way an old engine dies suddenly, and Toyota engineered it out of the equation before the customer ever turned the key. Number 5. Now step outside the engine bay because this is where most people get the story wrong. The thing that kills a motorhome is almost never the drivetrain, it is water. A leak in the roof finds the wood framing, the framing rots, the floor goes soft, and a rig with a perfectly good engine gets hauled to the scrapyard because the house fell apart around it. Most of these Toyota campers were built the same way as ordinary travel trailers, aluminum siding stapled over a wood frame, and those are the ones you find quietly rotting today. But one model was different. The Sunrader used a molded fiberglass shell, essentially one continuous piece with far fewer seams for water to sneak through, and a tapered roof that actually shed rain instead of pooling it. Even the fiberglass ones had a weak spot of their own, the wraparound plexiglass windows over the cab, which could leak and let the front of the roof sag if an owner ignored them. But sealed and cared for, that molded shell simply outlasts a stapled wooden frame. That is why clean Sunraders now sell for absurd money while their stick-built cousins go to the crusher. Same engine underneath. Completely different survival rate for the part you actually live in. If you want a Toyota motorhome to reach 500,000 miles, the engine was never going to be your problem. Keeping the box on top watertight is the real long game. If you are getting something out of this, subscribe. We break down the machines that outlive their owners every single week. Number 4. Here is the number nobody wants to run. A loaded Toyota motorhome could weigh somewhere in the range of 3 tons, and most of that weight sits on the rear axle. Now add a full water tank at over 8 pounds a gallon, a couple of passengers, a week of food, tools, and the bikes on the back. It adds up frighteningly fast, and a huge number of small motorhomes left the factory already flirting with their weight limit before you loaded a single thing. This is the invisible killer. Chronic overloading does not blow the engine. It destroys axles, springs, brakes, and tires slowly and then suddenly. The mechanics who have torn apart the rigs that failed early say the same thing over and over. The broken ones were almost always severely overloaded and starved of maintenance. The ones that reached the big mileage belonged to owners who understood the weight math and respected it. The engine will happily outlast everything. Whether the rest of the truck gets to come along depends entirely on whether the person behind the wheel ever bothered to weigh it. Number 3. And now, finally, the engine everyone actually came here for. The 22R and its fuel-injected twin, the 22RE, the 2.4-liter 4-cylinder that built the entire Toyota truck legend. Pickups and 4Runners with this engine routinely crossed 200,000 and 300,000 miles on their original factory internals, with nothing more than oil changes and the occasional valve adjustment. It earned a nickname among mechanics: the engine that does not quit. To the people who own and rebuild them, it is not a vintage engine at all. It is still a working engine, still in service, still respected. Everything good you have ever heard about these motorhomes traces back to this block. But notice where it landed on this list, not number 1. Because the whole point so far is that the engine was the easy part. Toyota solved the engine so completely that it stopped being the question. The bulletproof 22RE is exactly why you have to look everywhere else, at the axle, at the roof, at the weight, to figure out whether a specific rig is a survivor or a trap. The engine is the reason these motorhomes could last forever. It is not the reason any particular one did. Number 2. This is the single fact that separates the motorhomes that reached 500,000 miles from the ones that never had a chance. As these campers grew longer through the 80s, some stretching out to a full 22 feet as builders chased more floor space, the coach got heavier than the truck underneath was ever designed to carry. The early rigs rode on a half-ton rear axle that simply was not built for that load, and axles began failing on the road. It got serious enough that the United States government issued a national safety recall. Toyota moved to a proper 1-ton, 6-lug full-floating rear axle, and from around 1987, the motorhomes came with that stronger axle from the factory. So there is a hard line running through these vehicles. A rig on the upgraded full-floating 1-ton axle has a foundation that can go the distance. An early one that never got the fix is living on borrowed time, no matter how sweet the engine sounds. Buyers who know this check the axle before they check anything else. It is the closest thing there is to a single yes or no answer on whether a Toyota motorhome was ever going to survive. Number 1. So if these things were so overbuilt, so beloved, so nearly immortal, why can't you walk into a dealer and buy one today? Around 1993, Toyota stopped supplying the truck chassis to the motorhome builders, and the reason cuts to the heart of everything on this list. It was the weight. The very problem that killed the early axles, a small, tough truck asked to carry more house than it was meant to, became a liability Toyota was no longer willing to sign off on. The builders moved to bigger domestic chassis, and the little Toyota motorhome quietly went extinct at the top of its game. Sit with the irony. The engineering that made these rigs run forever, a compact truck massively overbuilt at its core, is the same constraint that ended them. And that is the real revelation the old mechanics keep circling back to. These motorhomes were never immortal because of one bulletproof engine. They survived when the whole system lined up: the right axle, a dry shell, an honest load, and an owner who understood all three. Find that rig, and 500,000 miles really is just the beginning. Subscribe, and we'll show you the next machine built to outlive everyone who doubted it.